I mean, this is very simple. We right now have a white supremacist that is sitting in the White House. He is backed up by other white supremacists. And if you really want to know who the criminals are in this country, you can Google it. You don't have to trust me. But the people that commit 80% of the most violent crimes in this country are white supremacists. Yet for whatever reason, they sit and they serve at the pleasure of the president. They are the ones that were there on January 6th, tearing our democracy down physically. And now we have them tearing us down right here from within. Here is the problem.
Of course, Congresswoman, to interrupt you, but President Trump, of course, has denied any allegations to the white supremacists, and that's why he apparently fired what he I know your point, but he did fire Darren Beatty in reaction, they believe, in part to his attendance at that conference. Does that change your opinion in any way?
No, it doesn't change my opinion, because we saw what he literally recently just posted, and the coddling is for the white boys. That's what's happening right now. I am tired of the white tears. Listen, if you are competent, you are not concerned. When I walk into Congress every single day, you know why I don't feel a way and why you can't make me doubt who I am? Is because I know that I had to work 10 times as hard as they did just to get into the seat. When you look and you compare me to Marjorie Taylor Greene or me to Lauren Boebert, there is no comparison. And that is the life that we have always lived. So the only people that are crying are the mediocre white boys that have been beaten out by people that historically have had to work so much harder. This is why they don't want us to have education. This is why they are trying to literally say we won't fund the HBCUs, because they know that if they've already gone after affirmative action and they're saying, you know what, don't allow them to come into, say, these PWIs, as we call them, don't allow them to come into these institutions. We know why they created the HBCUs in the first place. It was because they wouldn't allow us into the white institutions. And so now they're not allowing us in. And now they're saying, you know what, we're also going to defund the HBCUs. You know why? Because they don't want any more Kamala Harrises. They don't want any more Jasmine Crockett's. But I got news for them. I don't care what they do. We will fight to the end to make sure that we get our due. Because again, if you want to talk about the people that shouldn't be in this country, you probably need to look in the mirror, because the last time I checked, the Native Americans who some of ICE have been rounding up, or the Puerto Ricans who are absolutely Americans, listen, the only people that came and colonized this place are your ancestors, Trump.
I'll note that the Beatty position is for the acting undersecretary for public diplomacy and public affairs, a key role in helping to shape U.S. messaging abroad related to counterterrorism and violent extremism. Thank you, Congresswoman, for your words tonight and for your insight.
Black people need to stop complaining about systemic racism and take some personal responsibility. Everyone is equal under the law now. They may be policed more, but that's only because they commit a disproportionate amount of the crime. Why? Well, I'm not saying that black people are naturally more likely to be criminals or anything. I just think it's a part of their culture. Why? Well, probably because their dads weren't around to raise them properly. Why? I don't know, probably because they were too poor to afford a kid, so they left. Why? Well, they probably can't get a good job because they never went to college. Why? Well, I guess it is probably because they couldn't afford it, but they didn't get good enough grades to get a scholarship either. Why? Well, I guess that is probably because their school is underfunded. Why? Because school funding is determined by property taxes, and they were born into poor areas. Why? Because their family hasn't been able to build enough wealth to move out. Why? Because the first black people who were born with equal rights under the law are less than 60 years old.
You have to realize that, yes, the involvement of violence in black folks comes from that long history that the president was talking about, that we have to remember that we learned from some of the best. They had some white boys came over here that did the first beheadings in Point Coupee, Louisiana, where I'm from. Slave insurrection, that was the way you dealt with it. Tuskegee syphilis incident. We're going to see how black men die if they have syphilis, but we pretend we treat them with penicillin, and we're just going to watch the pathology of how they die. Now, that wasn't back 200 years ago. That was 1930 to 1974. We're talking about giving these wonderful blankets to the Native Americans infected with smallpox as they walked on that trail of tears just to see how they die and to eliminate their population so we can take all of that land. So the violence that is in America has come from a very learned position that was brought here by some Caucasian folks. All right? So now,
you know what plantation they've never shown us, Abby? The most prominent ones. The ones that were most profitable. The breeding plantations. Why don't you want to show us those? You know why? Because after the research that I did for this album, you realize that the moment that a girl menstruated, she was put in a stable where a horse would be and forcibly mated, forcibly raped by a male of the slave master's choice. And when she had children, they weren't called children, they were called a litter of pups. The punishment for raping or killing a person in medieval Spain is gelding. Gelding is when you take hot pincers and you take a man's balls and dick off root and stem. Killing a person, law of the Bible, right? Medieval Spain, super religious. Killed a man, he should be killed. Why were indigenous and black people categorized as subhuman? So under the law, you would not be punished for the things that you did to us. That's why. You used to be proud, right? You used to be proud, white America, of rape and murder. You used to be proud of colonization. You used to, wow, that made us tough. And then you got ashamed. And that's what you're dealing with. That's what America's dealing with, a schizophrenic crisis. There's a British manual, right, that was taken out of the British Museum because within the manual, it talked about how rape was a weapon of war that should be used against the indigenous population. You're ashamed of that now. You're ashamed, right? Who was Christopher Columbus? His image has been so whitewashed, but he was trafficking little girls on an island. Who does that sound like, huh? All you right-wing defenders of Christopher Columbus and his legacy, he was trafficking 9-year-old indigenous girls on an island. Who does that remind you of, you intellectual coward? Just because liberals are dog shit doesn't mean that you shake hands with the devil. Right? The same way I tell people all the time who are white working class people who hear about reparations for black people and automatically get upset. You know, they hear the word Africa and they're furious already. But the problem is this. The money doesn't come from you. No. It comes from the financial institutions that banked and built their stock exchange on labor, on the payback that they got from slavery. Because reparations is not actually what African people are asking for in this country. African American people are asking for the other half of reparations. You see, America already paid reparations at the end of the Civil War to slave owners. They gave them money per black person that they let free, and they refused to honor the people that were actually victimized. So until you do that, you will always be cursed, America. And you can call me a communist, a socialist, but you know what? It doesn't matter what you call me. You know that I'm right.